What if I told you that the reason you keep attracting the same toxic people isn't bad luck, but something far more psychological? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about attraction patterns will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about empaths and manipulators. Carl Jung said that we don't meet people by accident. We attract what mirrors our unintegrated shadow, and nowhere is this more evident than in the empath-manipulator dynamic. You see, most people think empaths are simply unlucky in relationships, but Jung's research revealed something far more complex and, frankly, life-changing. Here's what most people don't understand about this pattern, and trust me, by the end of this, you'll never see your relationships the same way again. According to Carl Jung, every human being operates with what he called psychological magnetism. We unconsciously broadcast our internal state to the world, and the world responds accordingly. But here's where it gets fascinating. Empaths don't just broadcast sensitivity. They broadcast something far more specific that manipulators can detect from across a room. What Jung discovered about this invisible signal will shock you. Empaths carry what Jung termed wounded healer energy. They've been hurt, yes, but they've also developed an extraordinary capacity to understand pain. This isn't weakness. It's what Jung called compensatory development. The ability to transform suffering into profound emotional intelligence. But here's the dangerous part that nobody talks about. This same energy that makes empaths incredible healers also makes them visible targets. Carl Jung understood that manipulators operate from what he called the predatory unconscious. They don't consciously think, I'm going to find someone to exploit. Instead, they're unconsciously drawn to specific energy signatures, and empaths, with their open hearts and healing presence, light up like beacons in the psychological darkness. Listen carefully to what happens next, because this is where everything becomes clear. According to Jung's theory of psychological projection, manipulators see in empaths what they've lost in themselves: the capacity for genuine feeling, for authentic connection, for selfless care. But instead of admiring these qualities, something darker happens. They want to consume them, control them, possess them. Jung called this phenomenon psychological vampirism, and it's absolutely real. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Empaths don't attract manipulators because they're weak. They attract them because they're powerful. The manipulator senses this power and makes a calculated unconscious decision. If I can't have this light within myself, I'll control the person who does. But there's something even deeper happening beneath the surface, and it explains everything. Carl Jung discovered that we unconsciously recreate our earliest attachment wounds in adult relationships. For many empaths, their first experience of love came with conditions. They learned early that their worth was tied to what they could give, how much they could endure, how well they could fix others. Jung called this the original psychological contract, and manipulators can sense this contract from miles away. The empath unconsciously broadcasts, I will sacrifice myself to earn love. The manipulator unconsciously receives, here's someone I can take from endlessly. It's not conscious. It's what Jung termed shadow recognition. Two wounded people finding each other, but in the most destructive configuration possible. Here's where the psychology gets absolutely fascinating, and why this pattern feels so impossible to break. According to Carl Jung, we're attracted to what feels familiar, not what's healthy. The empath who grew up earning love through service will feel uncomfortable with someone who gives freely. That healthy person will feel wrong, boring, too easy. But the manipulator who demands constant proof of devotion, that feels like home, that feels like love. Jung called this repetition compulsion, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. But here's what will absolutely change everything once you understand it. Carl Jung said that awareness is the first step toward breaking any unconscious pattern. The moment an empath realizes they're not attracting manipulators because they're flawed, but because they're unconsciously repeating an old pattern, everything shifts. They stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what am I trying to heal by choosing this person? According to Jung's research on psychological transformation, the empath must undergo what he called conscious suffering. They must feel the full weight of their pattern, understand its origins, and make the deliberate choice to break it. This isn't easy. Jung understood that changing unconscious patterns requires more than willpower. It requires what he termed integration of the shadow. The empath must acknowledge the part of themselves that believes they're only lovable when they're useful. They must face the wounded child within, who learned that love hurts. They must integrate the shadow belief that they don't deserve easy, healthy love. And when that integration happens, something magnificent occurs. Carl Jung discovered that when we heal our core wounds, we fundamentally change our psychological frequency. The empath who has integrated their shadow no longer broadcasts wounded healer energy. They broadcast sovereign healer energy, and that frequency repels manipulators while attracting healthy, reciprocal relationships. The manipulator can sense the shift immediately. This person is no longer available for exploitation. This person knows their worth. This person has boundaries that cannot be crossed. Jung called this psychological immunity, and it's absolutely transformative. Here's the final piece that makes everything make sense. According to Carl Jung, we don't actually attract what we want. We attract what we believe we deserve. The empath who unconsciously believes they must earn love will keep attracting people who make them prove their worth. But the empath who has done the shadow work, who has integrated their wounds and reclaimed their power, they become what Jung called psychologically complete. And psychological completeness is the ultimate protection against manipulation. They no longer need to be needed. They no longer confuse suffering with love. They no longer believe that difficulty equals depth. They've learned what Jung spent his lifetime teaching, that the relationship we have with ourselves determines every relationship we'll ever have with others. And once that internal relationship is healed, the external pattern breaks forever. This is the hidden reason empaths attract manipulators, and once you understand it, you hold the key to breaking free.